Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday, November the 21st, 2020. It is currently 10:55 a.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church, located here in Ovalo, Texas. And we're going to return to really the topic that we spent all of yesterday talking about. I was here for 2+ hours doing live broadcasting yesterday, and all we talked about was COVID-19, and we ended our live broadcasting yesterday talking about COVID-19 and a possible vaccination, all right? And we're going to return to that subject. We're going to try to advance the discussion. I'm going to try to give you some very important information, and I'm going to try to do my best to make sure you understand that we are talking about something that is very critical to your faith as a Christian, all right? And I want to make sure you understand this principle. I mentioned it a number of times yesterday. I've mentioned it a number of times in the past, and we're going to once again discuss it this time because I want to make sure people really understand this. Whenever we talk about events happening in our world, I want you to understand that we don't talk about these events just so that we can be, quote unquote, current, relevant, that I can try to follow the trend. No, every issue that we are facing in the world, everything that happens in your life as an individual, everything serves as a trial and as a temptation. Let me explain. No matter what happens in your life, it can be something good, it can be something bad. At the moment that thing happens to you, it can be something your kids say to you today, something your wife does, it can be something happens in a grocery store, at a fast food restaurant, anything that happens, everything that happens, every moment, every event. In that event, there is a trial, right, that will either reveal that you are going to handle it in a godly way, or it's going to be a trial that tests you and hopefully force you to really think, make a good decision. And by doing that, it purifies you. It purifies your faith, which is more precious than gold. It helps purify it. So it can reveal what's there. It can purify. And contained within that situation that can kind of serve as a trial, there's also a temptation because you can respond to it in an incorrect way, in an ungodly way, and fall into sin. Now, hopefully, if you handle it in an incorrect way and you sin, that can still serve as a purifying force because hopefully you realize you've sinned, you repent of that sin, you confess it, and you learn from it. But I think we have a tendency just to go through our everyday life just saying this happened and this happened and this happened, and we don't stop to go, wait, those events served as a trial to reveal the genuineness of your faith. They were there to help purify your faith, and they were there in a sense to serve as a temptation, and you can determine if you responded to it in an incorrect way or a correct way. And I know I have a hard time stopping what I'm doing and thinking about that. I walk into the house, something happens, I react. I don't stop after I react and go, wait a minute. That demonstrated that I lack patience. That demonstrated anger. That demonstrated selfishness. That demonstrated ungodliness. That demonstrated that I wasn't loving the way I should be. Every situation is there to help hopefully move you forward in your spiritual life. That is true on an individual basis, but it's also true when big things happen in society. They give us a test. They try us. They will reveal how genuine our faith is. It can purify our faith, but it can serve as a temptation. And you look at some of the major things that's happened in our society. We've had the election. How as Christians did we respond to the entire election situation? Did we respond in a godly way? Did we demonstrate that we were thinking biblically, or did we demonstrate that we were thinking politically? Did we demonstrate that our citizenship was in heaven, or did we look like that we were very much citizens right here on earth and we handled things in an ungodly way? What did it reveal? The entire COVID-19 situation. What has it revealed about Christians and our Christianity? What has it revealed about our churches? Have we handled it in a godly way, or have we allowed this to divide and hurt? Have we responded in a loving way, or have we responded in a way demonstrating that we're more worried about ourselves than other people? What has it revealed? So we've had the election, we've had COVID-19, and now we are facing very soon, we're going to be facing another situation that's related to COVID-19, and that is the COVID-19 vaccine. Once this is made available, then we have to know, are we going to, again, this is going to challenge us. Are we going to respond in a godly way, or is this going to be a situation that serves as a temptation, and then we fall into conspiratorial thinking, spreading false information, lying, not speaking the truth? I want you to see that when we talk about these things, they're relevant to your spiritual life. Everything serves as, in a sense, a trial, a test, a temptation. And let me go through them again. They reveal the genuineness of your faith. They help purify your faith, or they serve as a temptation that ends up leading you to fall into some kind of sin. I mean, if you're out there lying and spreading false information, you didn't handle the test correctly. You're sinning, because the Bible says, speak the truth, put away lying. You know that. So I really want that narrative. I'm going to try to repeat that over and over and over, especially when we talk about controversial issues, because sometimes when I talk about controversial issues, the emails I received clearly demonstrate they don't understand what I'm trying. What they demonstrate is that my program served as a trial, a test, and a temptation. And in many cases, their response demonstrated they fell for the temptation. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. I'm trying to help you not do that. I'm trying to help you look at every situation and go, okay, how do we respond to this in a biblical way so that this will purify my faith, so that this will show the genuineness of my faith? We can't allow every situation to cause us to sin because we don't think about it. We don't approach it from a biblical perspective, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. All right, now, with all of that said, yesterday, we ended our live broadcasting day here at Victory Baptist Church yesterday evening by listening to about a 12-minute video from a Catholic bishop saying, hey, I cannot get the COVID-19 vaccine. You should not get the COVID-19 vaccine because the COVID-19 vaccine contains the stem cells from an aborted baby. You can't do it. Don't do it. It's unethical. It's wrong. Now, he provided zero evidence. And he really focused on the vaccine being produced by Pfizer. Now, Pfizer released a statement saying that is absolutely not true. There are no there's no stem cells from an aborted baby, no fetal tissue, no fetal stem cells in our vaccine at any stage. And so I said, here's what we need to do. We need to continue to research this. We need to try to get to the bottom of it, because there was some news articles released back in June that seemed to indicate that all of the vaccines were utilizing stem cells from aborted babies in their research and development. But Pfizer is saying that's not true. So I'm like, okay, we've got to get to the bottom of it. And about 3:00 this morning, I heard something. I'm like, oh, here's someone who's done some additional research, and I'm going to play what they found in just a few minutes. But before we do so, I'm going to present to you an illustration to try to really to get you to think about this issue as deeply and as carefully as you can, all right? Now, I'm not saying that this illustration is perfect, but I just want to put it out there because because I think sometimes as Christians, we throw out kind of a moral declaration. We throw out either a condemnation or an approval of something, and sometimes we don't always think it through carefully, logically, and biblically, right? So I want to just present a hypothetical situation just to try to make a point. Now, I'm not saying the point is perfect, but I think it at least is worthy of your time to consider, all right? Now, according to many, if a vaccine contains the stem cells or fetal tissue of an aborted baby, that it's unethical, it's unbiblical, and it's sinful for a Christian to take that vaccine, or forget a vaccine, any kind of medical treatment that contains fetal tissues or developed through the fetal tissue of an aborted baby, that it's just unethical and it's wrong. We should avoid any kind of medical treatment that way. All right. And the reason they argue is that the baby was aborted, that it was murdered, that it was unethical, that it was wrong, that it was that these tissues come from an evil act. All right. Now I want you to imagine the following. Your wife, your daughter, your son, one of them, you can choose whichever one depending on your family situation, your loved one, your wife, if you're a teenager, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever the case may be, your parent, someone you love deeply is lying in a hospital bed and they're dying. And they need an organ transplant and they need it like right now. They need it stat. They cannot wait another day. They've got less than 24 hours or they're going to die. And you're like, please, we need an organ transplant. And you're doing everything you find it, and they cannot find it. And finally, the doctor comes running into the room and go, we have an organ transplant. Now, here's what happened. This individual had been kidnapped, tortured, and killed. But their organ is viable, and we can harvest that organ and then place it in your loved one, and it will save their life. Now, do you say yes, or do you say no? That person was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered. That their organ is being harvested as a result of an evil act. Therefore, I will not participate in it. Or do you say, well, that was horrible that happened. They were murdered. It was horrible, but maybe something good can come from that evil act, and it can save this person's life. Now, some people will say that's not a perfect illustration. I understand. I'm just saying that in abortion, I believe an evil act occurred. A baby was murdered. But if their fetal tissue can then be utilized to save lives, is that not a good thing or is that unethical? Right? Now I'm not saying it's perfect. Okay. I'm just saying that you have to be consistent and thinking it through, because I've seen organ transplants, someone killed by a drunk driver. They're killed by a drunk driver. Horrible, evil act. Someone selfish gets behind the wheel. They're drunk. They kill someone. But then their organs of the person killed by the drunk driver is harvested and taken and saves someone else's life. And everybody sees that that's a wonderful thing, that good came out of evil, and that it's great and it's celebrated. And even by most Christians, it's celebrated. But if there's a vaccine that was put together by the use of fetal tissue that came from an aborted baby, then now that's unethical. Are we being consistent? That's all I'm asking. Are we being consistent? Have we really thought this through? All right. So I just want to continue to put that out there. And these ethical questions, though, let me remind you, they serve as a test. They try us, and we have to think about it carefully, logically, and this testing of our faith produces patience, because we try to take every thought into captivity. We try to look at it biblically, and we try to make the best decision we can so that we move forward in a godly way and that the situation develops our spiritual maturity and character. So I just think that we have to really think about this logically. All right, now let's get to the vaccine. Again, according to some, the COVID-19 vaccine, again, for some reason, the one by Pfizer is the one that has been given the most attention. Moderna also has one. Moderna has not released any statements, but Pfizer is categorically denying it. I know there's every Christian program. I've listened to Christian program after Christian program making crazy claims about the vaccines. So we have to get to truth. So I want you to hear what I heard at 3 a.m. this morning, and we'll see if this adds to our understanding. Are you ready? Here we go. This comes from the radio program Issues, Etc., or Issues, ETC. All right. And where they talk about the issues of the day, and they try to do so from a theological perspective. All right. Here we go.
Let's talk a little bit about a possible vaccine for coronavirus. There are many contenders, but the one that seems to be leading the race, so to speak, is being offered by the drug company Pfizer. There are people who are deeply concerned about the vaccine, apart from any political considerations, about how it is actually developed, some of them perhaps using fetal cell lines or fetal tissue, even from abortions. What do we know about this one?
Right. There are two candidates now that appear on the verge of being approved with an emergency go-ahead in terms of the vaccine. One is by Pfizer, as you mentioned, and one is by Moderna. And when those announcements were made, because I know that many people who are pro-lifers, really don't want to participate in taking vaccines if fetal tissue from abortions were used in, for example, culturing the virus for use in testing and for use in making the vaccine. So I looked it up. And by the way, I didn't do any original research. I relied on Charlotte Lozier Institute, which is a very respected pro-life research institute. And particularly I rely on my friend David Prentice, who I believe has been on your show. And the Charlotte Lozier Institute did a chart of the various vaccines and whether or not they use these fetal tissues from, and by the way, the cell lines are from abortions from decades ago. And these two, the Moderna one and the Pfizer one, did not use fetal tissue in making the vaccine in any regard.
Now stop right there. I want you to hear that again. Pfizer and Moderna did not use fetal tissue. That's from a pro-life group saying that. Now, there's Christian podcasts making all kinds of crazy claims. That's what look, if we're going to handle ourselves godly and we're going to respond to this situation in a godly way, the last thing we fall into sin when we start spreading false information. So we have a spokesman for Pfizer saying, nope, it's not there. A pro-life group who looked at all of this, they say it's not there. You can't continue to spread false information. Now the test is becoming a temptation and you're falling into sin. That is what we have to avoid. Now, I'm going to continue to play the rest of this, but I also wanted to point out, just please note, even if they did contain fetal tissue, it would be from an aborted baby decades ago. So it would be the evil happened decades ago, and now it's trying to be used for good in our current time. Is that unethical? Is that ungodly? Again, go back to the transplant issue. Someone is, kidnapped, tortured, something horrible happens to them. It's an evil act happens that kills them, but then their organ is harvested and saves your loved one. Do you maintain the same ethical objection, or do you all of a sudden change your ethical objection and allow your child to die? Well, no, my child's going to die because that organ, the only reason it's being harvested is because that person died in an evil way. So we're not, how do you want, are you being consistent? And I think we have to ask ourselves, are we being consistent and are we being truthful, right? Consistency and truthful. And consistency is always hard. Whenever you have a moral standard, it's always hard to be consistent. I'm inconsistent, you're inconsistent, but we must strive to be consistent, all right? Let's see what else they have to say in regards to this. Let's see if they add any like they don't contain any of this tissue. However, I'm waiting for the however or the but. Let's see if there's a however or a but here, all right? Here we go.
The Charlotte Lozier Institute has said in their list that this is ethical. So I'm relying on them because I trust them, and I certainly trust David Prentice to give the straight scoop on that situation and that question.
Wesley, how do you respond to somebody who says, "Look, it's the vaccine for the virus, and it's going to save so many lives"? Considerations about how they made it should probably just pale by comparison to the fact that it's going to stop the virus. What would you say?
Well, I would say that people have to decide those issues for themselves. One of the things, I don't think we have time to get into it, I'm worried about is that there would be a vaccine mandate. I think better is if these are good vaccines, then you let people know as much about them as possible so that they can make the proper decision for themselves. And if a pro-lifer is worried about taking a vaccine in which fetal tissue was used from an abortion, and they would find that unethical, forcing them to take that vaccine, to me, would be, absent really compelling need, would be a profound injustice and a profound violation of human freedom. Now, we're not talking about smallpox with the COVID. It's a very serious disease. I'm trying to avoid getting it, but unless you're elderly and have a high or have high comorbidities, the chances of you dying from it are very remote, and even getting seriously ill are remote. Now, of course, some people do, but are we going to say that only a particular point of view is legitimate, or are we going to let people have as much information as possible, have as much transparency as possible so they can make their own choices? The reason that David Prentice and Charlotte Lozier went to the very extensive effort to research their list, and by the way, they used peer-reviewed science journal articles to obtain their information. The reason they did that is because they respect freedom. Some people would say, I don't care if you use tissue from children as long as it's going to protect us. Some people would be that crass. Other people have different opinions. And we need to respect that and allow people to make these kinds of choices for themselves, particularly with regard to this circumstance where we have a pandemic, but at the same time there are people who are really beginning to resist the idea that the pandemic should be an excuse for doing away with human liberty and Western freedoms. And the best way to do that is to get the information out. And I applaud David Prentice and Charlotte Lozier for making this list so people can make these kinds of decisions for themselves.
Wesley Smith is Senior Fellow at the Discovery Institute Center on Human Exceptionalism. He's an attorney and consultant to the Patients' Rights Council, author of several books, including Culture of Death, The Age of Do-Harm Medicine, and columnist for National Review Online. You'll find a link to his columns on the Talk on Demand archives page at issuesetc.org. Wesley, thank you very much.
So there you have it. They do not. That seems to be pretty dogmatic, seems to be pretty conclusive, that the vaccine from Pfizer and Moderna does not contain fetal tissue. So if you have Christians out there saying that they do, then you have to confront them. Now, I'm not saying put them on full blast on social media, but you got to call that person aside and say, look, as Christians, this situation is going to serve as a test, as a trial, and you just failed, and you're putting out false information. Repent, retract, clarify, and move forward in your Christian life. Allow this to purify your faith. That's what we all must do. Now, he raises another ethical question here. He raises another ethical question, which is going to also be another challenge that we are going to face as Christians. And pastors are going to have to, I think pastors are going to be pretty much forced as being shepherds, under shepherds, as they stand before the people and how to direct them and what to do, all right? And this is going to come down to the ethical question of mandated vaccine. If they mandate the vaccine and say you must get it, what should the Christian response be to it? What should the Christian response be to it? Now, his answer to that ethical dilemma was, hey, yes, COVID is serious, but your chances of dying are pretty slim. And, basically acting like, so in other words, you could probably live without the vaccine and be okay. Now, while he's saying that, because that broadcasted, I think, yesterday, while he's saying that, we have news. I mean, just look at the headlines from today. Hospitalizations break record. All right, it's not just the fact how sick people get, it's the fact, or whether they die. It's you're overwhelming the healthcare system. I don't know why people don't understand that. You're like, well, your chances of dying are pretty slim. Okay, but if the hospitals are overwhelmed, they have no more ICU beds, they start rationing care, and they can't take care of people's medical needs because they're overwhelmed with COVID-19 patients. I'm sorry, you're now putting people's lives at risk. Now people are being harmed. So what is the solution? What is the solution? You don't want a mask mandate because you believe that takes away freedom. You don't want to restrict gatherings because you believe that takes away freedom. You don't want forced social distancing because you believe that takes away freedom. Well, and you don't want a vaccine mandate. Again, what is the solution? You can't allow our health system to completely collapse and fall apart and not do anything. It's unethical to just say, let the system crash and let people die. That's not a Christian answer. So what is it? So if you're forced to get a vaccine in order to try to save the medical system so that they can get back to saving and preserving life, is it a sacrifice you're willing to make? Or are you going to say your freedom, your rights over the good of other people? What's the Christian worldview? Is the Christian worldview not me, but others? Is the Christian worldview love others, place others before myself, or is it about your freedom and your individual rights? You cannot look at this as an American. You're supposed to look at this as a Christian. America is all about individual rights, individual freedom. Christianity is more about the sacrifice of an individual right for the glory of God and the good of other people. I mean, the whole story of Christianity is God's eternal Son humbling himself as a servant in order to lay down his life as a substitutionary sacrifice for undeserving people who are sinners who deserved judgment. And that mind is supposed to be in us. That's the way we are supposed to think. I think it's Philippians chapter 2. In fact, let's go there. Philippians chapter 2. I'll grab my Bible really quick because I think this becomes a very important aspect of a Christian worldview and how we respond to things. Philippians chapter 2. All right. Here's what he says. Philippians chapter 2, Paul writing to the church of Philippi. We'll start in verse 1. Philippians chapter 2, verse 1. If there be therefore any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any bowels and mercies, fulfill ye my joy that you be like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. I wish all churches, that was true of every church, that everyone in the church was like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, being of one mind. That would be, we could stop church splits, all right? If that could be true of our families. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than themselves. What should motivate your decision as a Christian is that you do so not through strife, not through vainglory. In other words, not about you. You humble yourself, right? You humble yourself in lowliness of mind, and you esteem others better than yourselves. Verse of Philippians 2:4. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. You can't worry about yourself. You're supposed to be worried about other people. That's the biblical mindset. And then let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Okay, here's what he tells them to do. How are you going to do that? You have to have the mind of Christ. And what is the mind of Christ? Look what he did. Philippians 2:6. Who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men, and was being found in fashion, I got to turn the page, as a man, he humbled himself, and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. That's the mind we're supposed to have. He laid down his life. He was equal with God. I mean, the God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, one God, three distinct persons, co-equal, co-eternal. And the Son took upon the form of a servant and then humbled himself even to death on a cross. And he did that to save others. That's the way we're supposed to think. So when it comes to get a vaccine or don't get a vaccine, if that vaccine goes in the direction of preserving and helping others, are you willing to do so at the expense of your own personal freedom? Now, this raises a lot of questions. And please, I always have to say this because there'll be someone listening to me who don't know who I am, start emailing me, putting me on full blast, not understanding. If there's anyone currently talking, well, I'm the only one currently talking, the person currently speaking to you, I think I have every right to speak in regards to vaccinations because it was January of 2003 where I was mandated to get a vaccine because I was supposed to be sent somewhere in Iraq to set up a decontamination site because we were afraid Iraq was going to use weapons of mass destruction, and I was going to be sent into an undisclosed location to set up a place where if people were contaminated, we would be responsible for decontaminating them. That was my job. And so I was mandated to get the anthrax vaccine. It's a Friday afternoon. I go down the hallway to the immunizations clinic. The needle is stuck in my arm. I don't have the initial reaction that everyone talked about from the first anthrax vaccine. That evening, I go out. I think we're going to do our taxes. I'm at H&R Block, and I'm like, I got to go home. Something's not right. And then over Friday, Saturday, Sunday, by the time Sunday evening came about, I was having a hard time even speaking in complete sentences. Something had gone horribly wrong. I wake up Monday morning. I literally feel like I'm going to die. I make it to my place of employment, hospital. Thank goodness I'm in a hospital. I'm sitting in the records section on a stool. Someone starts talking to me, and it sounds like, and I'm like, what? And all of a sudden this black cloud hits me. At this point, I have no recollection of what happens. According to all the witnesses, the doctors, the nurses, everyone who witnessed it, I had a massive grand mal seizure. I stopped moving. They thought I had died. They called a code blue. Next thing you know, I'm being transported from that hospital in ambulance to a different hospital. I wake up and I don't have a clue what's happened, what's going on. And that set off a now never-ending cycle of seizures, all because of a post-vaccine reaction to the anthrax vaccine that has literally neurological problems. I've had basically a massive headache since 2003 that never goes away. I can't even count how many seizures I have had. I've lost count. My military career ultimately gets brought to an end, and I'm medically retired. I'm declared 100% disabled by the federal government. At first, they tried to deny that the vaccine had anything to do with it. I could tell the whole story. So I know what happens when a vaccine goes horribly wrong inside your body. So I understand that. All right. I understand it, and I can understand concerns. Trust me. I'll just be honest with you. I am not looking forward. If they make the vaccine, if they mandate the vaccine, I don't know what I'll do. I probably could get medical. At one point, the United States military declared that I could not receive any vaccine. They prohibited me from even getting the flu vaccine. They wouldn't let me get anything. My civilian doctor is like, whatever, you should get it. So I don't know if I don't know if I would, what my doctor would tell me to do. They may give me a medical waiver saying I don't have to get it. I don't know. But, we're going to have to make these decisions. I'm just saying that the thing that has to be the framework for your thinking as a Christian is Philippians 2. Thinking about others. And sometimes we have to sacrifice our rights for the good of others. Sometimes we have to think that way, at least from a biblical perspective. Maybe it doesn't fit your politics. Maybe it doesn't fit the part of the country you're raised in. Maybe it doesn't fit your idea of being an American, but our citizenship is not here. We're operating from a completely different mindset. Christians don't operate from an American mindset. We operate from a biblical mindset. So I don't know I don't know what I'm going to do. I know this. I'm going to try to wait and not make an immediate decision unless I'm forced to make an immediate decision. And I'm going to try to give it some time to see if the vaccine is having some very serious side effects. And if it's having any serious side effects, I'm going to be like, whoa, I don't know if I can handle another serious side effects from a vaccine, considering what the anthrax vaccine did to me. So I'm going to be cautious, and I can understand people being cautious. We just can't make a decision based off fraudulent information. And a lot of Christians are saying it contains fetal tissue, and we now seem to have confirmation that they do not. So we cannot use that as an excuse. We need to be factual, and we got to be thinking, and we have to consider Philippians 2 as moving forward. That you've got to figure out, how does Philippians 2 apply to you moving forward in this situation? All right? So there is the information we have. I'm going to continue to do research. I'm going to continue to listen and look. And if we find any information that contradicts what we have been given, then we have. And again, we have to remember, this information came from people who had researched it. They were relying on peer-reviewed medical journals. So it seems like it's pretty accurate. I can't rely on every conspiracy theory podcast link you send me saying this person says they contain, the mark of the beast. Okay. All right. Next. Okay. We need to deal with the real world. Okay. Right. Rational people. So you can, you can stop sending me. I mean, you can send me those links because I love to listen to anything. So I'll listen to it, but don't get upset if I then rip it apart for proving it to be irrational, illogical, and filled with fraudulent information. That because we, as Christians, we have to speak the truth. We got to put away lying. And this is a very important situation. So you're going to be faced with the vaccine question. It's coming your way. I don't know how they're going to handle it. I don't know if they're going to make it mandated. I don't know. And you're going to have to make some decisions. Just make sure you make those decisions. Be patient. Be slow to speak. Quick to hear. Don't do something that's ungodly. Don't slander. Don't gossip. Don't spread false information. Be thoughtful. Consider Philippians 2 and you're trying to decide what to do and your deciding process. Think it through. Be careful. And be deliberate and be biblical and use spiritual wisdom. That is how we're going to have to move forward. And I will struggle with you. I'm not sitting here saying I have all the answers. I'm telling you what the anthrax vaccine did to me. I mean, it changed my entire life. It messed me up in ways that I can't even go into detail about. All right. So, I mean, I hate when people act like I don't understand. I deal with issues every day because of what happened in 2003 when that needle got stuck in my arm. I had no idea my life was about to change. Right. So I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little concerned. And it's just, I think it's interesting that the same people running around saying faith over fear. I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm not doing faith over fear. Well, then all of a sudden when it comes to the vaccine, where's your faith over fear? Just have faith. It can't do anything to you, right? So it's like Christians are, again, that's that consistency thing, right? Faith over fear. I'm not going to wear a mask. Oh, wait, I need 13 guns because I've got to protect my family. Faith over fear. We need armed guards in our churches. Faith over fear. Like we've got to be consistent in our thinking through all of this. And I think that we have to struggle to do that. I know my podcast puts me pretty much at odds with a lot of Christians, but there needs to be a voice out there trying to challenge us to really think about these perspectives carefully. All right? So just go ahead and put me on full blast. Start emailing me with all of your attacks to newsif@yahoo.com. 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 I'm pretty used to all of the criticism, so feel free to offer yours in the list of all the others, and I'll try to get to it in a timely manner. All right, everyone have a great day. God bless.